be x squared plus 2. All right, remember, just be careful, guys. When you multiply 2 times negative 1, x squared times negative 1, that gives me a negative x squared. But remember, your next step is to subtract, so you have to distribute the subtraction sign all the way across. Any questions on number 4? Let's take a look at number 6. Now, what I like to do, when I take 2x minus 1 and divide it into 8x to the third minus 1, notice I'm missing an x squared, and notice I'm missing an x. What I like to do when this happens, and you have to do this with synthetic division, but it is very helpful when you're doing long division, is add your placeholders underneath of your division sign. So add that 0x squared plus your 0x minus 1. Remember, like I said, you want to keep those like terms lined up. The synthetic division, you have to do this anyway. All right, so now I'm going to start the division process. Again, you always work with the first term. Take 2x and divide it into 8x to the third. So 8x to the third divided by 2x. So what's the result when I take 8x to the third and divide it by 2x? Well, what's 8 divided by 2? 4. And then x to the third divided by x is an x what? Squared. So notice I'm going to let's put my 4x squared above the 0x squared. So now I'm going to multiply. So 4x squared times 2x, again distribute. 4x squared times 2x is an 8x to the third. 4x squared times negative 1 is a negative 4x squared. So remember, with long division, remember you want to distribute. So now remember, after you multiply, what's the next step? What do I need to do here? I need to subtract. So it's going to be a minus 8x to the third. And again, what happens with minus and negative? It becomes a positive. So the 8x to the third cancels. 0x squared plus 4x squared will give me a what?
Do you do the opposite sign?
Yes, when you subtract, yeah, you just flip all your signs. And then you bring down, remember, so I have my plus 0x and bring down my minus 1. Remember, you keep going until you can't divide anymore. Again, always work with that first term. So I have to take 4x squared and divide it by 2x. So what happens when I take 4x squared and divide it by 2x? That's going to leave me with a what? 2x. So again, I'm going to add 2x at the top. And now what do I do again with the 2x? I'm going to have to multiply. So 2x times 2x is a 4x squared. 2x times negative 1 is a negative 2x. So after I multiply, what do? I have to subtract. So I subtract the 4x squared, and what happens when I subtract the negative? That becomes a positive. So 4x squared minus 4x goes away. 0x plus 2x is a what? 2x. And then I bring down my minus 1. Go again. Take 2x and divide it by 2x. What's 2x divided by 2x? 1. So 1 times, so I'm going to multiply again. 1 times 2x is a 2x. 1 times negative 1 is a negative 1. And again, I subtract. So it gives me a meter 0. Okay? So just remember, when you're doing the long division, just like synthetic division, it's very helpful if you're missing an x squared or an x, put the placeholder of 0 there. That way you know where to line up. Like if you multiply, you know I can take that 4x squared and line it up underneath the 0x squared. It's a helpful thing to do. You have to do it with the synthetic division. All right? Let's take a look now at some synthetic division. Now remember, long division works all the time. Synthetic division does not. So again, remember, your divisor, you can only use synthetic division when you're dividing by an x plus or minus a constant. Remember, the coefficient of x has to be a positive 1, and this has to be a binomial. That's the only time you can use the synthetic division. All right? And again, these are just the steps we're going to talk about how to do synthetic division. So here's an example number 7. 6x to the third minus 19x squared plus x plus 6 divided by x minus 3. Again, because the coefficient of x is 1, and this is plus or minus the number, we can use synthetic division. So the way synthetic division works is I always draw like half a rectangle. Again, so remember, x minus 3 is a factor. What you want to find is the 0 in order to do the synthetic division. So if x minus 3 is the factor, what 0 comes from this factor? 3. That's the number that goes in the front. You want to make sure that your first polynomial is written in standard form. In other words, start with the largest degree for x and put all the exponents in descending order. So now what you're going to do is line up the coefficients from the first polynomial. So I'm just going to take the 6, write the minus 19. By the way, what's the number in front of x, even though it's not written? 1, and then a 6. You mean the first one? Yes, that's exactly how you start. So everybody pay on how I've set it up so far. So the way synthetic division works is you always bring down the very first coefficient. Very good, so remember? Multiply, you multiply on the outside. So 3 times 6, remember you multiply on the outside. So 3 times 6 is what? 18, and remember where you put it? You put it underneath the next coefficient. Remember what you do inside the box? You add. Remember, you multiply on the outside, you add on the inside. So negative 19 plus 18 is a what? Negative 1. And you repeat the process again. So 3 times negative 1 is what? Negative 3. Again, you add on the inside. 1 plus negative 3 is a what? Negative 2. Multiply again. 3 times negative 2 is a what? Negative 6. And 6 minus 6 is a 0. And I always circle that very last number. Why do I circle that last number? Because what is that? Do you remember? The remainder. This is your remainder number. So any questions on how I did the synthetic division so far? So now, these numbers at the bottom, these are actually the coefficients of your answer. So now remember, think about how we did long division. We would have to take 6x to the third and divide it by an x. So that would have to be an x to the what? Power. X squared. So remember, whatever the degree of this first polynomial is, you will drop this down a degree. It's always going to be 1 degree less. So this 6 is the coefficient of x squared. And then you just write your polynomial in standard form. So 6x squared, again, what comes after an x squared? It would be an x. So this would be the coefficient of your x, a minus 1x, and then a minus 2.
That's what I was saying when I said,
Okay.
right, like, if you don't do the 6x,
Yep. It's a shortcut to long division. It's a shortcut to long division. Like I said, some of you just like long division. Some of you will do synthetic is quicker, obviously, if you can use it. But like I said, it's not always, you can't always use it. That's why you have to know the long division as well. All right, so any questions on that? So let's look at another one. Let's look at number 8. X to the third plus 2x squared minus 5x plus 12. We're dividing it by x plus 4. So again, we can use synthetic division since I'm dividing by a 1x plus or minus a number. So set up my half the rectangle. Again, x plus 4 is the factor. What 0 comes from the factor? What's the 0 that would come from x plus 4? Negative 4. That's what goes on the outside of my rectangle. Now, line up. Again, the coefficient of x to the third is a what? 1. So then just line up your coefficients 2, negative 5, and 12 at the top. Again, what do you do with this very first coefficient? The very first coefficient, we're going to do what? We bring down. And then you do what with the negative 4 and the 1? You're going to multiply. So negative 4 times 1 is a negative 4. Remember, you line that up underneath the second coefficient. And then you add inside the box. What's 2 plus negative 4? Negative 2. Negative 4, multiply again. Negative 4 times negative 2 is a what? Be careful. Negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 5 plus 8 is a 3. So negative 4 times 3 is a negative 12, and 12 plus negative 12 is a 0. And that's your, and again, I always circle that last number so I can remind myself that's the remainder. Okay? So now again, so 1, negative 2, and 3, those are the coefficients. So again, I started with an x to the third. What's my answer going to look like? My answer is going to start with a what? X squared, and then the next one will be a what? Minus 2x, and then a plus 3. Has to be, when you're dividing by, it's got to be a 1x plus or minus a number. So if you look at all the examples we did on the previous page, we could have done synthetic on number 3, because you're dividing by a 1x plus or minus a number. You could have used synthetic on number 4, because it was a 1x plus or minus a number. However, could we have done it on number 6? No, because of that number. This one you have no choice but to do long. Okay. So let's take a look at number 9. So in problem number 9, first of all, we can do synthetic division because you're dividing by a 1x plus or minus a number. So again, I'm going to draw half my rectangle. Now, x minus 4 is the factor. What 0 comes from this factor? 4. So that's what goes on the outside of the rectangle. Now notice you're missing a whole bunch of x's between x to the third and the constant. What's the coefficient of x to the third? 1. You've got to put your placeholders of where x squared and x would have been. So there's my 0x squared, there's my 0x, there's my minus 64. You've got to make sure you have a placeholder for each exponent for x to set in the descending order. So we start by bringing down the 1. We multiply. What's 4 times 1? 4 times 1 is 4. So 0 plus 4 is 4. So now multiply. What's 4 times 4? 4 times 4 is 16. So again, I'm going to bring that up, place it underneath my second 0. So what's 0 plus 16? 16. 4 times 16 is 64. And negative 64 plus 64 is a 0. So now remember, I started with an x to the third. So what's the answer going to look like? I'm going to start with a what?
Squared.
X squared, yeah. So 1x squared plus what comes next? 4x. And what comes finally? 16.
You can have remainders.
Yep, you can have remainders. I think you have to. Okay. Okay. Any questions? I'm sorry? All right. So are we good on the next one? All right. Let's look at number 10. So first of all, I can do synthetic division because I'm dividing by 1x plus or minus a number. What 0 goes in the front? If my factor is x minus 2, what 0 goes in the front? 2. So again, I have an x to the third, x squared, and an x, so I don't have to worry about any placeholders of zeros. So I'll just start lining up my coefficients at the top. Again, I bring down the very first coefficients. I bring down the 2. Multiply on the outside. So 2 times 2 is a 4. So negative 3 plus 4 is a 1. Multiply on the outside. 2 times 1 is a 2. Add on the inside. 4 plus 2 is a 6. 2 times 6 is a 12. And negative 5 plus 12 is a 7. And again, I circle that last number because what is that 7? That 7 is a remainder. So now we started with an x to the third. So what's my answer going to look like? I have to drop it down to a what? X squared. So 2 is going to be the coefficient of x squared. So I have a 2x squared plus 1x plus 6. Now when you have a remainder, the way you write your answer is you take your remainder of 7, in this case, you're going to place it over whatever the divisor is, the divider of x minus 2. So remember, you always take the remainder, and whatever that factor, that x minus 2 is, you make a fraction, because it doesn't divide evenly, so you'll have a fraction as part of an answer. So you take the remainder and you place it over the divisor.
The original?
Yes, so whatever that is right there. So again, remember, you would take this x minus 2, and that's going to be the denominator of the fraction. Hopefully clear up some cobwebs a little bit. Remember doing this a little bit last year with the synthetic and the long division. All right. Synthetic, yes?
Yeah.
Yes. No. No. You need to write it as the fraction. Nope. Okay, guys. So, your homework tonight, again, like I said, some of you had completing the square before last year, some of you did not. So some of you, it should be a review of what you did last year. Some of you may have, completing the square may be